This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fernelli. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, aka the Cover 3 Tailgate, where KC3 says, I'm having CFB withdrawal symptoms. Don't worry. We're going to get you covered all through the off season. Let's see, a lot of Comrade Cannell takes. Everybody wants to hear what Danny thinks about whether the Missouri Valley Conference is a too big league. Congratulations to Drake to winning Arch Madness over the weekend on America's Most Watched Network, the Network of Stars. We will be getting to Tennessee State, maybe not who their next head coach is, but what, Danny, how much are you getting your feels ready for college hoops?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot at stake. I just want to remind people that the ACC, which has just been kicked like every which way because the season hasn't gone that great. The same narrative was going around last year, the very same thing. And the Big 12 was the best conference in college basketball. And I'll remind people that the ACC had 3 out of the final 8 teams in the Elite 8. So we'll see if it can happen again. If it does, just watch out, Commissioner Sankey, because I'm coming for you. And even if Duke wins it all, I'm coming for him. I've got some, I am petty. So yeah. I have some stuff saved in the drafts because now it usually only happens during football season, but that the SEC is really, there's a lot of pent up frustration from losing their stranglehold on college football. Like now that that's done, that era is over completely. Now there's all this angst and just vitriol that's coming my way. So I'm getting tweets on the reg, like reminding me of the SEC's dominance in the regular season, and they've been pretty good, but I will just warn them, there are some receipts being held in check.
For those wondering just how bad the ACC is at basketball this year, if you don't pay close attention, with conference expansion, we've now seen so many teams and leagues that not everybody qualifies for their conference tournaments. So I have to give Matt Fortuna the credit for this one. I looked it up, but the numbers have changed. In the Big Ten, Nebraska, which is ranked 55th on KenPom, and Penn State, which is ranked 60th on KenPom, did not qualify for the Big Ten conference tournament. They finished in the bottom 3 of the league. Meanwhile, in the ACC, Wake Forest, which is ranked 73rd on KenPom, not only qualified for the ACC tournament, they got a double bye by finishing in the top 4. That's how good the ACC is this season.
Listen, it's a real meat grinder, okay?
Exactly.
You've got to go through
the gauntlet. Smith, Nobody else has that gauntlet they have to go through.
No one's got to deal with that. You seen what Stanford and Cal are doing out there? That's a house of horrors heading out to the Bay Area. Okay, lots to get to, as you see right here on the headline of your podcast. The main task, and I am a little bit disappointed that our colleague Bud Elliott's not going to be able to be here. This is his baby. He loves being able to use the off-season odds as a great way for setting expectations. And so with our friends from FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, we do have win totals for all of the power conferences. So over the next couple of weeks, we are going to take some time looking at all of these win totals and saying, if Vegas is right, aka if the win totals hit about where they are on the numbers and the prices, then what? What does it mean for the coaches? What does it mean for the teams, the programs? Well, we get into all that in just a little bit. We are going to start in the SEC, but first, a big splashy hire by Bowling Green. We remember Scott Loeffler left to go be the quarterback's coach at the Eagles. Not a lot of panic on our part, especially given what that opportunity would be and what we said. The Bowling Green job and life in the MAC over the course of Scott Loeffler's time there, he joins, right as the transfer portal becomes a thing. Now all of a sudden MAC schools are getting rated by all their best players, like basically every single season. So Bowling Green decides to go and hire Eddie George. Now, you'll remember Eddie George had a pretty good run with Tennessee State. Now, he takes over and showed that he was not just going to be a celebrity coach. He really wanted to get in there, try to field some winning football teams. So, Tom, what do we make of the hire of Eddie George to Bowling Green?
I mean, I think anytime you are going through a coaching search in early March, you're in a tough spot for, finding a good candidate. But I think all things considered, getting Eddie George out of Tennessee State is a good hire for Bowling Green. I have no idea if it will work out, but obviously Bowling Green in Ohio, Eddie George, kind of a big name in the state of Ohio. If you are Bowling Green, you are not going to be recruiting at the level where Ohio State is, or so many other schools that recruit that area are. You're kind of looking for the hidden gems that you can develop. Eddie George, having the name Eddie George in that state, will probably be able to, it'll give him a little bit of a head start finding some of those guys from local high schools, getting them to go to Bowling Green and convincing them to come there. He's still going to have to deal with the whole everybody rating your team once you develop them. But like, Eddie started at Tennessee State, and he's built that program up. Like, they moved from the Ohio Valley to the Big South. He went 9-13 in his first 2 seasons, 6-5 in 2023, and then they climbed to 9-4 this year. And they won their conference. They got to the NCAA, the FBS or FCS playoffs. So like, he was building something there. So he's shown the ability to kind of, build a program. And if you're Bowling Green and you're any MAC program or any program at that level, like, that's what you need. You need somebody who knows how to build and build and build, because you're going to get rated every year, and you have to be able to lay a foundation to put something on top of it every season. So I think it's a very interesting hire in that it's got us talking about Bowling Green football, first of all, right now. So that tells you everything you need to know. But I just think that overall, considering all the situations, the circumstances that this coaching search was being done under, it's hard to argue this is anything but a good hire for Bowling Green.
I agree with almost everything you said. I think the resume is great. The branding is great. I just worry for Eddie George. I hope the school is patient. I hope the fan base is patient, because at one point, like when Urban Meyer took this job and really, thrust himself onto the big stage by, having great, seasons there, and, then taking the Utah job, he kind of created this place that was a launching pad for coaching careers, right? And then it was Clawson. I think I even called a game with Clawson and Dino Babers, who then, both of those parlayed it into Power 4 jobs. So, like, I worry about a lot. The late window, the fact that he's coming in so late, the fact that the group of 5 gap is widening even more. But like, I agree. I think it's a good hire. Like, I think it's great that you can bring somebody like that. And I think his resume is really solid from what he's done at the HBCU level. So I like it from that standpoint. I like him. I know him personally. I think he's a great guy. I just think it could be a little bit bumpy early until things kind of steady. And then, like, once we get to some system where it's just more continuity and maybe there's not so much movement, then I think you've got a chance to compete. I think he's proven that he can build up a winner. I just think it could be a little bit bumpy getting there.
Yeah, and I do think Bowling Green will have patience. Like, if you look at their history, they've been a patient school with their coaches. Like, Urban was only there for 2 years, but then Greg Brandon came in. He was there for 6 seasons, although he got off to a very good start with a roster that was built by Urban Meyer. But Dave Clawson was there for 5 years. Dino Babers was there for only 2 years, but that was because he left. Like, Mike Jinks had a terrible tenure, and even he still got 3 seasons before they got rid of him to bring in Scott Loeffler, who in his first 3 seasons was 7-22 before, and there were a lot of calls to like get rid of him, but they held on, and the last 3 years have been very successful. They got into a bowl game each year. So I think you're right. Like, considering what they lost from that team and the timing of this, it's hard to sit there and think Bowling Green's going to have a very good season in 2025. But I do think that they'll be patient with it. And plus, I think Eddie George's name and profile gives him some patience from the school too.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, how about this from our friend Raymond in the tailgate? An A hire to C+ school. Instead of C+ for all the hires, hey, you know what? This is a good hire for Bowling Green football. So I can at least say that. But Tom, as we all say, I have no idea. No idea if it will work out. And even
Hope it does.
It's the MAC.
Yeah.
Random number generator every single season. But I'll be looking forward to watching some of Bowling Green. We, of course, have a lot of those MAC games on the mothership CBS Sports Network, so we'll be getting some Eddie George time slot champs.
How many yards do you think Eddie could rush for in the MAC next season?
Over the course of a season?
Yeah, if he just suits up. Yeah.
I mean, the dude is a specimen, even to this
the biggest
day.
Dude on the field every single
he
snap.
would run like Derrick Henry. He'd just be running guys over, just trucking them. They would look like junior high guys next to him. He is a massive, massive dude.
So
great guy too.
Okay, so tell me more about the personal relationship there.
So, I mean, we were the same year. He won the Heisman my senior year.
Right.
So I, did a lot of the functions with him. And then even in media, I've interviewed him several times since then, run into him in New York at various, Heisman dinners and stuff. He's a really interesting guy. He's very smart. Even spent some time on Broadway. Like he was in Chicago, the Broadway musical.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just a different guy, but he is as nice and as cordial as you'll find. I think he'll really do well on the recruiting trail. Like in addition to the brand of him playing at Ohio State right down the road, I think he really is an impressive individual when you talk to him. So I think like parents will trust, hey, my kid's going to maybe it's not where we really wanted to go, but I can trust him, develop him into a young man. So, and I think maybe he does pull away some recruits that possibly would go to a lower tier Power 4 school, would say, all right, let me try it with Eddie George and see if we can build this thing up. So again, I'm optimistic about it.
Yeah. Also, I see a comment in the tailgate. Things I learned today. Bowling Green is in Ohio. Yes. Remember, Western Kentucky is in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Bowling Green of the MAC is in Bowling Green, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So always, hey, listen, don't get it twisted. You'll go to the wrong state. So make sure you get your details on all of that. All right. Coming up on the other side, we begin our conversation. If Vegas is right, what does it mean for these SEC coaches and more? Next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more. It's Gareth Bale! Wonderful goal! On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast as we begin taking a look at the season ahead. There are some of these schools that I think let's just go ahead and dive in. Right now, the Alabama Crimson Tide have an over-under win total of 9.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook. The under is juiced -134. The over is +110. Kalen DeBoer, year 2 at Alabama. If Alabama goes 9-3, so slightly to the under, but that's sort of where our juice is. If Alabama goes 9-3, what does that mean for Kalen DeBoer?
I think he's fine. I think there's more angst. I think he probably comes in. Again, you could argue he's on the hot seat right now. I think we're all smart enough to realize, like, hey, there's a different. This might be one of the most unique. I mean, I think there's Bama, there's Ohio State, there's Texas. I mean, there's a couple places that are just different. This is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
When we say hot seat, like I think it's got to be wheels come falling off for him to be done. But I think he's 9-3. I think there's angst. I think there's a little bit of, restlessness from the fan base. But I think he's fine going into the next season. Like I think he survives. But I do also think who are the 3 that he loses to kind of matters as well.
Oh, mute button.
That was in honor of Bud.
Oh, yeah, we got to pay tribute to our guy.
Shout out to Bud. Hope you pulled through with your laryngitis there. I agree with Danny. I think it depends on how the 9-3 looks. Like,
okay,
if those 3 losses are like one of them's going to be at Georgia and you get blown out, or if you lose to Oklahoma again, or you lose to Auburn, I think that obviously has a say in it. But like, if they go 9-3. It would be the first time Alabama went consecutive seasons without winning at least 10 games since 2006, 2007.
So pre-Saban, first time since
Saban's first season, Shula's last season. So I think that, as Danny said, he's kind of already on the hot seat. Mm-hmm. You're on the hot seat as soon as you replace Nick Saban. Let's just be blunt about it. And then you go 9-3 last year. You miss the playoff. You get absolutely beat up by Michigan, like a shell of a Michigan team in the bowl game. You come back and you only win 9 games again. Unless you're in the playoff, you're heading into year 3 with your seat really, really hot. Like, fans are already starting hot boards on message boards of who they want to go after to replace your ass. Like, we got to go get Dan Lanning out down here and take over, blah, blah, blah. So you're already in a kind of a sticky situation. I think if I'm Kalen DeBoer, I'm trying to win 10 games to get to the playoff at a minimum.
Yeah. That Alabama was the team that was right on the edge this year. SMU gets in, Alabama does not. I would be in the playoff. And look, 9-3 might get you in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the relationship between Alabama and Kalen DeBoer is probably a little bit more on the postseason outcome than it is specifically on the win total. Because is anybody looking at Alabama to win the SEC this year?
No, but I think that's kind of the problem.
Good point.
But see, this is also where I think Saban was genius for getting out when he did, because we've even talked a little bit about this, how fan bases, it's going to take a while for them to recalibrate expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Like 9-3 could be really good. Like, you could lose to some good teams. The schedule's much tougher. And even if you're right there, kind of like the 9-3 teams last year from the SEC, like just on the outside looking in, I think it still could be a season that's pretty good. It's not good by their standards, but by everybody else, it should be. That's where I think is going to be an interesting dynamic. Like, but don't you agree? Like, even if it's 8-4, let's say they take a step backwards and it's 8-4. Is it that much different? Like, do you think there's a chance they would pull the trigger and make a move after 8-4?
They won't make a move. I do think he would enter year 3 on the hot seat.
Without question. But then same thing if he's 9-3, right? If he's 8-4, 9-3 are kind of similar. If you're outside looking in the playoffs, it doesn't really matter.
So if you're 8-4, those 4 losses have probably come before the end of the season, because your final 2 games are Eastern Illinois and at Auburn. So if you lose to Auburn to get to 8-4, I think that could have a pretty outsized impact on what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, like, if you've got 3 losses going into that game or 4 losses, say you still beat Auburn. Either way, you've either got 3 or 4 losses going into the Iron Bowl. I would bet you've kind of already begun putting feelers out. And then maybe if you get the right response from somebody, then you would pull the trigger after 2 years. I don't think it's likely, because that's the other thing too. Like, if you're looking at who the top candidates are that you're going to be going after for this job, if they're being contacted by Alabama while Kalen DeBoer is still in his 2nd season, like, they're probably looking at this job like, Christ, I need to win the damn thing right away, don't I? So I don't know. It's going to be a weird situation. It could, like, that kind of quick trigger could also impact the legitimate candidate of pools that will be interested in the gig.
Yeah. Because then all of a sudden are you willing to take that to walk in there? Hey, Speaking of, there has been a reputation around the Auburn Tigers coaching job, especially when it comes to trying to wrangle all the different power brokers and all the different factions within the booster community. FanDuel Sportsbook has an over-under win total of 7.5 for Hugh Freeze's squad. Now, the over is at -148. The under is at +120. So we are talking about 8-4 being considered more likely than 7-5. We've heard about the money cannon, and we've heard about all this time that they've been working to, and it's going to be yet this year, and it's going to be next year, and 2025. This is our all-in season. 7-5, 8-4. Is that the result for an all-in season that is going to help Hugh Freeze?
Well, it would be their first winning season since 2020.
Wow. I'll say this: if he doesn't get 8, I think Hugh Freeze is done.
Yep.
See, that's because the complication to me of the equation here is that why is Hugh Freeze there? Because there were certain people with power who didn't want Harsin to begin with, and they wanted to go get Hugh Freeze, and they went and got him. Are those same people going to turn around after 2 years and be like, oh, our bad. We screwed up, guys. We made the wrong decision. I don't know if pride will let them get rid of him after 2 years. unless the bottom truly falls out. I think if they get to that win total, they go 8-4, 7-5, he's fine.
It would be
And then I
3
think-
years though, right? This would be after 3
Oh,
years,
this would be
right?
his third year. You're right. I'm sorry.
That's where I think, because I think after 2, I think that's why he was so comfortable and very like, hey, whatever happens, happens. But I think this one, even those big backers would be like, all right, I'm tired. Like, all right, next man up. Like, let's go. We made a mistake.
Well, let's look at their schedule. Who are these 7 wins against? Because the road schedule is not friendly.
No.
Baylor, Oklahoma, A&M, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. Like, it's not a list of juggernauts, but it's not fun. So you get Georgia at home, you get Alabama at home. If you win one of those games, I think you're safe no matter what.
If you beat Georgia or Alabama,
I think it buys you another year because it shows proof of concept.
Yeah, I think that the Bama one I think saves him. I don't know about Georgia, like because it's earlier, but there is a recency. Like if beating Bama in the Iron Bowl is the 7th win and not the 8th, and that gives Bama 9-3. You know, like we were just talking about Bama, and they're a good team, like right on the cusp, and you knock them out potentially. Then I could entertain a scenario where he survives at 7-5 with a win over Bama. But outside of that, that's where I think 8's got to come.
I would think getting 7-5 keeps him for another year, but it doesn't take him off the hot seat, if that makes sense. Like it would still be all right. You better win a lot of games next year.
Do you know what's funny about those years? They rarely happen.
Right.
You know, like, okay. Well, now you got to go and you got to win a lot of games. But as though those wins are just going to show up, as though everyone else gets worse at the perfect time that you need to get more wins. And you just are not going to be able, like, where is the extra talent influx going to come from at that point? So
like,
lots of pressure on the Plains for Hugh Freeze.
That is the odd part of doing this because like the landscape is just so much different now.
I was thinking
Texas and Oklahoma, same thing in the Big Ten. It's so much more difficult to get those 9-win seasons.
Well, it's the, it really is the NFLification because I'm thinking about like a great NFL record is what? Like 14.
9 and 8.
Well, let's say they play 17 game schedule now, right? So like 12
11.
and 5.
I think 11 wins is really good. It used to be 10, but with the extra schedule, I think 11 is like a really good season.
But that's 11-6 is a really good season, you know? I think that's what, especially in the Super 2, the NFLification has changed the way we talk about this. Okay.
That's what I was saying. I think 9-3 should be a pretty good season, but that's where the fans have to recalibrate, getting used to saying, oh, well, we had 10 or 11 wins every year.
Double-digit win seasons has been such an easy like tag to be able to throw on stuff, and it's just going to be much more difficult. Talking about a number that may or may not relieve pressure. Here we go. Billy Napier and the Florida Gators at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. See the over-under win total set at 6.5. Now the over is -148. The under is +120. Clearly, we've got 7-5 being considered the likely outcome. Is 7-5 good enough?
Not after going 8-5.
I don't think 7-5 is good enough.
No. I mean, no, I don't know. I think if he goes 7-5, he's not coaching their bowl game.
I would tend to agree.
Okay.
He might not even be coaching the Florida State game at that point.
Right. It is funny how, like, would he have been better served to be 6-6 this past year and been close, but then you look improved if you get to 7 wins the following season? Because now, I mean, I think the Gators are going to be a trendy pick to make the playoff from some people, but Vegas clearly doesn't believe in that much hype. But like at SEC Media Days, when they ask who's the dark horse, I think Florida's going to come up.
And also, like, he didn't bring in an OC, or at least change the play callers. He didn't, it's like this is kind of a desperation season, and he didn't really treat this offseason all that desperately, if you get what I'm saying. So
kind of.
And if you look at the market right now, trying to predict what schools would come open next offseason, is there going to be a better job than Florida likely open? I mean, as always, some coach might leave a really good school for another good school or an NFL team, but just
we've got another job that I think that also made a hire in the same cycle. We're going to talk about here on the other side that would maybe make that a little interesting.
Yeah, but I still think Florida is one of the top jobs on the market if it comes open. So
it's like it's like if you know you are going to get your pick, like if you know that you're going to get first pick in the coach draft, that is the coaching carousel, you're going to be more likely to make the move on Napier.
And also, like, you look at their schedule: at LSU, at Miami, you get Texas at home, you're at A&M. You get Mississippi State at home. You better win that damn game. You get Georgia at home. You're on the road for Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Ooh, man.
It's the same schedule.
I know. It's 7-5 is like, maybe that clouds the judgment again. Like, because that's kind of what happened last year is like, well, they were only, 8-5, but look at that schedule. So maybe they look at 7-5 and they do the same thing over again. But I don't know, man. I feel like Florida needs to be like, Lagway needs to be awesome. Florida needs to be in the playoff hunt, not get to the playoff, but we need to talk about them in the hunt later in the year.
Gosh, they could be 2-2 or they could be 4-0 to start the season the first month. And my goodness, those two dynamics, like either one of those, either the hype will be off the charts because they start 4-0, or we'll be right back in this thick of it with the hot seat conversation going on.
Yeah, if they're 2-2 coming off losses to LSU and Miami with Texas coming to town, man.
Well, with that schedule, they could be like 3-4 through their first 7. Remember, he was 4-5.
Which is kind of what happened last year. He was buried.
Yeah. They had to come out and release a big statement, and then
they still like just mailed it in versus Texas, kept out a couple guys, got blown out, and then went on their run.
Coming up on the other side, we hinted at it just then. What does Las Vegas say about the expectations for Brian Kelly and his family? All that and more next.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
Oh,
what?
You know what's funny?
What?
Is I was thinking of a different team that could be open, that could be a top tier job. So
many top tier jobs.
A different team that
SEC
didn't make the hire in the same cycle, right?
No, wasn't it?
Florida, LSU,
Oklahoma. Was he a year later?
Because that's Lincoln Riley. I am not going to LSU. I'm going to USC.
Now,
like, there's a chance we could see none, or we could see 3 top tier jobs in the SEC. The chances of all 3 would be slim. But
does moving to the SEC not move the Oklahoma job down a little bit, though?
Oh, don't tell them.
I'm just saying, like, it was one thing when you were in the Big 12. Now that you're in the SEC, I don't know if I look at Oklahoma as like a top job.
Yeah, but here's where I do get what Oklahoma fans would push back with. Like, if you look at their accomplishments over the last 50 years, like, they've got more national championships, more Heisman Trophy winners. They dominated the Big 12 the whole entire time. I still think that makes it attractive. Now, financially, resources wise, are they taking a backseat to some of these? Probably, but I still think it's up there.
But I'm saying it'd be like a top 20 job, whereas Oklahoma fans might look at it as a top 10 job. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's a bad job to have. I'm just saying it falls down the ladder a little bit, because I think if I'm looking at the SEC landscape, I would put LSU and Florida both above Oklahoma.
I think you would have said that. All right, hold on. Listen, we got a lot of time.
You don't have like a whole recruiting base.
I have heard that I am obviously not like I would run this by Dusty, but I've heard, and I think I've said on here, that the operation itself is just incredibly well run. I mean, and that would be an advantage potentially over LSU or Florida. But LSU or Florida have won national championships more recently. They have won at a high level more recently. You can make the argument to me that winning in the talent-rich state of Florida, or even though Louisiana doesn't have the talent of a Florida, a Texas, or a California, the whole damn state is funneling to LSU. So and Nick Saban's not taking LSU players to Alabama like he used to when he was in Tuscaloosa. So I understand your footprint argument, but there would also maybe be some operational stuff where Oklahoma as a job is one that is not a bad job. But
I'm not saying it's a bad job.
I know. Okay, let's talk about LSU. We'll get to Oklahoma here very, very shortly. Over under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook of 8.5, minus 134 to the over, plus 110 to the under. Brian Kelly. So let's say, in fact, that Brian Kelly, after having 2 years of Jaden Daniels and after making it to the SEC championship in year one, but falling short, if he's 8-4, 9-3, I mean, what is the response from LSU if that's the case?
Gone.
For real.
Gone. You're going the wrong direction. This is LSU. You're not supposed to go 4 seasons without winning a national title. That's pretty much how it's like. Like you said, he got to the SEC title game his first year, 10-4, goes 10-3 in year 2, drops back to 9 wins last year. And again, they have Jaden Daniels. They had the best player in the country, and they fall back, or they still only went 10-3. They replace him. They get Nussmeier in. They go down to 9 wins. The problem that you had in 2023 was your defense. You didn't fix it going into 2024 when you really had to fix it because you were losing Jaden Daniels. If they don't fix that defense again and it's the same product out there, like, they're not going to give you a 5th chance. They've given you 4. So I don't know, man. I don't. If he only wins 9 games, he is gone.
I would say if you came with that heat with 8 games, I could maybe get behind it. But 9, again, if he's right there, and some of this does have to do with playoff appearance, but I think 9-3 probably doesn't get you in, just like this past season doesn't get you in. So you're right there on the outside looking in. But man, I think it would put him squarely on the hot seat the following season. I think he would survive 9-3. I think 8-4 that'd be the one where I wouldn't be shocked if they made a move.
You better beat Clemson to start the year, because if you lose that game,
what if Clemson goes on and makes the playoff themselves and they're a playoff team? Doesn't matter.
If you lose that game to Clemson, it's just going to set a bad tone. Where it's like everybody's just going to be looking for a reason at that point.
They lost back-to-back games to Florida State to start the season.
I know.
Yeah, and guess what? We're talking about him being on the hot seat now.
Yeah. I mean, there is.
Chip, you agree 9-3, he's done.
No, I don't agree 9-3, he's done. But I'm not coming with that kind of fire for it.
What if Notre Dame's back in the playoff?
What?
What if Notre Dame's back in the playoff?
They probably will be.
So you've brought Brian Kelly from Notre Dame where he couldn't win. He's been at your program now for 4 years. Hasn't made the playoffs once. Notre Dame made the title game last year, and they're back in the playoff. Are you starting to think, maybe it wasn't Brian Kelly?
He did play for a national title and made the playoffs a couple times with Notre Dame.
He made the playoffs.
He did
so
win.
Maybe it's Notre Dame is my point.
So all right, let's make it even juicier. If Bryce Underwood is amazing, now you're starting to talk me into a 9-3 is going to end up. I mean, the transfer portal whiffs of last offseason, getting all those players on campus, not being able to land them, going into the interview and saying we're not in the business of buying players, having a defense that wasn't quite fixed, a team that was talented but flawed, and then going into this year, losing Bryce Underwood's commitment, who had been, you thought you were just holding on to that one. This was going to, fix everything. We go from Nuss to Underwood. We're good to go. You're going to get one more year of Nussmeier, and then the future looks a little bit cloudy. I would make sure that this LSU team is in the mix for an SEC championship at the start of November.
Yeah, and Nuss better take a step forward.
Yeah. I think that's all right. So it's 8-4 done. Would you jump on that, Danny?
I could buy that. 9-3. I'm not buying that. I also think like there's so much like, is there a quote or something that would get him in trouble that would put him more squarely on like some aloof, cocky quote that doesn't resonate with the fans? I could see that throwing like gasoline on this fire, throwing his players under the bus one more time after a game. If it is, the fourth loss of the season, I could see some of those scenarios coming into play where maybe I would buy it a little bit more.
I mean, they weren't a disciplined team.
Let me pitch it to you guys this way. They're 9-3. Okay. Their losses are all on the road. Clemson, Ole Miss, and Alabama. The 9 wins come against Louisiana Tech, Florida, Southeast Louisiana, South Carolina, Vandy, A&M, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and Oklahoma. Which one of those wins is saving his job?
A&M?
At home? An A&M team that probably going to be 8-4?
Well, hey, not losing at home to A&M saves your job.
Yeah.
Just saying, I don't know what he's going to have to hang his head on if he's 9-3 and he loses those 3 games.
It's
especially because Nuss will be gone.
Yeah.
So what's the quarterback? What's the replacement plan here? You don't have Underwood. There's not a whole lot to look forward to in the next year that you're like, all right, well, we'll come through next season. And hell, you had Jaden Daniels for 2 years. Didn't win with him. Why should we think you're going to win with the next guy?
So is Mark Stoops on the hot seat if Kentucky goes 4-8 or 5-7? Because currently at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, the over-under win total for the Kentucky Wildcats this season is 4.5. Over, heavily juiced, -142. Under at +116. So 5-7, 4-8. Any of that?
Well,
gonna change Kentucky's outlook?
If Bud were here, he would tell you, shouldn't be your Kentucky. Just take what you can get and be happy with it.
I think Bud's watching, so shout out. Hope you feel better, Bud.
Bud put in the notes something that is worth mentioning here. $41 million lump sum buyout. Is Kentucky going to shell out $41 million to get a replacement?
Gosh, he's got the best contract in all of sports, and it really is. Like, and he's earned it. He's deserved it. Like every time he gets a pay raise, if they get to a bowl or 8 wins or 9 wins, it increases. Like some of the clauses he has in there, and one of the reasons why this buyout is so steep. Man,
I think like this is one of those situations where he has been there for so long and he was super successful for pretty much the entirety of his tenure, that you start taking that success for granted if you're a Kentucky fan. So the impact of winning 7 games kind of wears off. Like he had the couple 10-win seasons, which are great, but those are, we know how fans are. Those are quickly forgotten. But now you bring in, we talked about the shifting landscape. Kentucky is definitely one of those jobs where the equation changes drastically when you bring in Texas and Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So you were kind of already on the bottom half of the league. Now you've been pushed further down, and we saw that last year. They immediately go from 7-6 to 4-8. Now, part of that was quarterback changes. They just missed. It didn't work out, and it really impacted their ability to play. But it's a situation where I think, whether fair or not, like I think the only thing, if they go 4-8, I think the only thing that saves them is that buyout. I think they're ready to move on at that point.
Somebody mentioned, who would Kentucky hire?
Summerall.
Yeah. I was going to say that would be the move, but are you having to fight LSU or Florida? Like is John Summerall? Yeah. Is John Summerall the top dog for SEC jobs? I mean, I'm sure John Summerall and John Summerall's agent would love it. Would love to find out that all the SEC teams are bidding for you, but
prediction.
Yes.
Phil Parker retires. Mark Stoops is fired. Stoops leaves, becomes the defensive coordinator, coach in waiting at Iowa. Kirk steps down. Mark steps in.
Leaving for Iowa to go retire is the plan. I don't know if all the pieces would come together. Like, would he leave to go be the defensive coordinator?
No. If he gets fired.
Okay. Then Phil Parker steps down, and we initiate the full transition into Stoops having a 10-year career as Iowa's head coach, continuing to play good old-fashioned Iowa football.
Mm-hmm.
I could rock. What about
Clip
Sam?
it, Mikey. Write a note. We're going to need that one in 15 months.
The Arkansas Razorbacks. This one is split awfully either side. 5.5 wins. Will the Razorbacks be bowling? Overs at -115. Under is at -105. Sam Pittman, like Billy Napier, started this year very much in the center of the hot seat conversation. However, he was retained. Now, Arkansas didn't have all of the wins that Florida had this year. And I don't know if we could say what win ended up being what's the moment that saved Sam Pittman's job. Can't point to one moment where I was like, yeah, he's good, but we never saw that story progress to the point where we were really starting to entertain a change being made in Fayetteville. So if they're 6-6, is that even worth keeping Sam Pittman? If they're 5-7, does it seem like a no-brainer? How do you view Sam Pittman's status at Arkansas, given the Las Vegas expectations that this will be a 5-7, 6-6 football team?
I think it's a similar situation to what we just discussed with Stoops. Why is Sam Pittman back?
Big old buyout.
Might have been the buyout. Buyout comes down. I don't know if that kind of season is enough to buy him time. So I think Arkansas needs to get to a bowl. And if Sam's going to get another season, because he's been there, 5-6 years now?
Yeah, the Tennessee win is what the tailgate's calling out. I would say that's fair. A big game, everybody was hyped up about it. Wasn't it like one of those ABC Saturday night games too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If they're 5-7, I think he's done.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only reason he got another year this past year is because you can say at a Tennessee game, but I think it's because he's a likable guy. Feels like a great fit. I think people want to see him do well there, but I also think finances probably came into play too. Like Bud has brought this up a lot about with the revenue share coming up, some of these programs a little bit tighter with the money. Do you really want to go ahead and make that move? But I think after 5-7, they would be forced to.
And I think after they go 5-7, Arkansas goes backwards to go forward. They pick up the phone. They call Brett Bielema. And they say, Brett, I know it didn't work out here the first time.
And he slams the phone down.
But would you still give us Barry Lunny's phone number?
Yeah, there's a clause in the contract that Bud has mentioned that has to do with a conference record and where it is in relation to 500, I guess.
Yeah.
And so if he has a losing season in SEC play, it could contribute to being able to lessen the buyout along the way. So something that was something that I know Bud has mentioned a lot on here before, and something that could contribute to the financial side of this for Sam Pittman. Do you see a 6-win, 7-win season? Like, is there a path?
Well, let's see. They should start off 2-0 with Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas State. Then they get Ole Miss on the road. They get Memphis on the road.
That's a game like you have to win.
That's a must-win for them.
If you lose that one, that might seal his fate.
Yeah, because after that, Notre Dame. Why?
Where is that game?
I believe it's in Arkansas, but I could be wrong. It says verse, but it might be a neutral site game, and Notre Dame does that a lot. At Tennessee versus A&M, but I'm pretty sure that's in Jerry World. Auburn, Mississippi State, and then you finish with road games against LSU and Texas before you come back home versus Mizzou. Where are the 7 wins on that schedule?
You got to beat Notre Dame.
You need Taylon Green to take a significant step forward. You need some guys to emerge on your defense to replace what you've lost. And you're going to need some luck. Like you can get Auburn and Mississippi State at home. You can get your first 2 games against Alabama, Arkansas State. If you get Memphis on the road, that's 5. So then
A&M?
You need 2 from Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Tennessee, A&M, LSU, Texas, Mizzou. Maybe you get Mizzou.
A&M, they play A&M. That rivalry is always kind of funky, no matter what the records are. They play them pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
If they beat, so it's the first ever meeting with Notre Dame ever. It is at home. Probably be a big fundraising weekend. Just don't let it be a good fundraising weekend for that buyout.
Right.
You know, I always used to joke about the big fundraising weekends. Like, well, this could go one of two ways when you get all of those boosters in the box together, because they're going to be talking during this game. We're either
Jerry
passing
Jones.
the hat around for NIL, we're passing the hat around for a buyout. You choose.
Yeah.
Good luck out there, sport.
Jerry there with a checkbook, because Jerry still writes checks.
Oh, absolutely.
He's sitting there. He's like, he's got the number written down. The only question is, who am I writing this to? As he sits there and watches Notre Dame and Arkansas.
Grant put in the chat that the A&M game is in Fayetteville.
Is it in Fayetteville this year?
I was surprised. I thought that was always a Jerry World neutral site too, but it is. I'm looking at Ticket StubHub, and it does show that it's in Fayetteville. So, again, even more important for them defending that home turf, getting some of those wins at home.
Yeah, back to home and home.
Excellent point by Ryan.
Chicken boosters probably not doing well. What's our latest poultry outlook? I mean, does that just like follow the general trade economy?
No, it's the bird flu.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
why eggs are so expensive, Chip.
Yeah.
I guess we know who goes grocery shopping in your house.
Hey, the midweek chip runs are supplemental and necessary for the Patterson family to survive. They are not as plentiful or robust as the weekend Parker runs, but those midweek chip runs keep this family humming, all right? Milk, okay, bread, deli meat, the things we need to get the lunches packed. We don't need eggs to get the lunches packed.
That's right.
Not in this house. All right, we mentioned them earlier. The Oklahoma Sooners at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. The over/under win total is set at 6.5, and baby, this is -110 both ways. 6-6, 7-5. We've changed the defensive staff. We brought in a new offensive coordinator in Charles Arbuckle. We brought in his quarterback from Washington State in John Mateer. Where Brent's calling the defense himself. He's going down with the ship. Danny, is 7-5 even good enough?
Gosh, I don't think so. I think if he's 7-5, he's in trouble. 6-6, I think he's done. 7-5, I think it's probably done. I think it takes 8 wins to get him back.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the calling the defense thing. It's
right.
I mean, he clearly understands that too, because that's the kind of move you make when you're like, all right, if I'm going down, I'm not letting anybody else be the cause of it. So you look at their schedule. Like the Michigan game, to me, until I see what Michigan looks like, that's a very winnable game for Oklahoma. In my estimation, it's at home. Temple on the road, that's a win. Like the non-con, Illinois State, Temple, Kent State, 3-0. Michigan, you could win. Temple, you should win. They might start the year 5-0. And that could be a problem. Weird as it sounds, because if you start 5-0 and then you get to the back half of that schedule and you lose like 5 of 6, that's going to leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Because the back of the schedule is Texas, at South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Mizzou, and LSU.
See, if Oklahoma improves, there's 3 winnable games on that remaining schedule. Getting to 8-4, if Oklahoma takes steps forward, and if I'm Brent Venables, like, I'm not going to put myself in the shoes of Brent Venables, but there's got to be a little bit of the competitor too, where you're just like, well, look, yeah, we should be 8-4. This is Oklahoma football. All this 6 and 7 ain't cutting it. I mean, it's just not to the program standard. If we're going to talk about where the Oklahoma job ranks, and we're going to talk about all the success that it's had over the last 50 years, then 7-5, 6-6 is far from the standard that should make it that job. And if you do that year over year over year, then yeah, it's going to be worth a change. That is a brutal schedule. But if Oklahoma is going to be Oklahoma football under Brent Venables, they should be able to win 7-8 games.
8's the number
to save it.
I think so. And it's unfair because, and I wonder, last year, Florida's schedule was talked about so much, how tough it was. I think clearly that kind of helped Billy Napier. I do think there's a similar, this is, the number 1 toughest schedule in the country this season. So I do think that helps. Man, I just think Oklahoma fans, a 7 burger up on the board, I don't know if that's going to be enough.
Yep. I mean, because that would be what, 3 of his 4 years or 6 or 7 wins.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You had one win, 10-win season, and then a bunch of these 6-6 middle of the pack type seasons.
And I also think too, like 4 seasons is enough of a sample size to understand whether it's going to work or not.
Do you think that the Michigan game can be like a magic bullet type thing? Because you're getting
how Michigan does after that game,
but you're getting them early.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, in theory, could be a better team at the end of the season than they will be at the beginning of the season. So I think about it like a magic bullet game, in that with context, we say the Michigan team that Oklahoma beat is not the Michigan team that's ranked number 9 in the country, going into the Ohio State game. But if you beat them, then you're saying like, hey, well, we've got to win against the 9th best team in the country. It could be a very, very important one in terms of the math, in addition to the conversation all around it.
I think it's a game you have to win regardless of how Michigan looks at the end of the year. If you're going to get to 8,
then it goes the other way.
Yeah, if you're going to get to 8, you need that win.
The
rest of the schedule is super difficult.
I think it should, but I think it's a good matchup for Oklahoma early. I think this is one you want.
Yeah, because you're going to have the veteran QB, even though he's new to your school. He's in a familiar offense. Whereas you look at Michigan, if it's Underwood, it's his, I don't know Michigan's schedule off the top of my head, but I got to assume that's his first actual road game. Mm-hmm. And that's not a fun place to play for your first road game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a good defensive coordinator / head coach to be facing in your first road game. So
Mississippi State has an over-under win total of 3.5, over at -132, under at +108.
He's fine.
He's fine.
Somebody gets paid to take the losses, right? In that Bud's line.
I mean, it's his second season. They're not gonna, unless there's some sort of scandal.
Do anything.
Yeah. Or they're getting beat by 85 points every single week. They're not going to make a change there.
Okay, we're a little bit deeper into this. But before we go, just going to run a couple ones by you just so we can at least get the conversation started regarding expectations. Georgia's win total is at 9.5, but it's -178 to the over. So we're looking at very likely a 10-2 regular season. 10-2 regular season is...
Get him out.
Yeah, it's that 10-2 regular season. Kirby's lost fastball.
He's done. He's washed up. Promote Bobo. Bobo needs to be the head coach.
And then let's see, where's Texas at? Texas 9.5 as well. Over is at -200. Is that the new reality of the SEC? Like the very best teams in the conference are going to be just projected to go out there and still go 10-2.
12 and hard is, or 12 and 0.
12 and hard is a great line.
12 and hard.
T-shirt.
Yeah, there you go. 12 and 0 is very hard. I mean, it was already very hard. Like we kind of just took it for granted when teams went 12 and 0 in the regular season. Now in these two, like them in the Big Ten, it is very, very, very difficult to go 12 and 0.
This is where I do wonder, because we are talking about a team that has the deepest pockets of anybody in the NIL game with the new revenue system that is supposed to bring about parity. Does that diminish some of these, like you're saying, hey, are the good teams, the powerhouses, going to be 10 wins, no brainer at the beginning of the year? I do wonder if that changes.
Especially if the SEC adds a 9th conference game moving forward.
Right.
Big Ten already has to deal with that.
Go to 10.
What?
Go to 10.
Go to 10. Texas A&M over under win total of 7.5, heavily juiced towards the over, -158. That'll be an 8-4 season.
Fine. I unless Elko has like a 2-10 season, he's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know how we're going to land at 8-4. I just know that at some point it's going to be 8-4.
Yeah. It'll be 5-0,
5-1 start.
3-4.
No, yeah. 5-1 start, 6-2, 8-4.
That's the classic A&M season.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we have changed head coaches 4 times since we started. Isn't that 4 times since we started working at CBS? And basically, it's the same rhythm almost every single year.
Yeah. Sherman, Sumlin, Fisher, now Elko.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it is truly amazing. And then, let's see, Tennessee's at 9.5. This one heavily juiced under.
Again, he's fine. I mean,
unless it falls out. Yeah.
I think there's a few coaches there's what in the SEC, it feels like there's one or two untouchable with Kirby and Sark. And then there's a bunch of coaches who are just one bad, and I'd say maybe all of them, one bad year away from being on the hot seat. But I don't even know if Heupel's in that. I think Heupel's in a pretty good spot where it would take 2 down years.
It would take 2 down years because of the like fever dream season of beating Alabama and, everything that happened that year. But I think that 2 bad years might return some Tennessee fans to that thinking that was around when he was hired, which is like, oh, this is just like a stopgap coach. This is just a coach to get us through the NCAA sanctions. He's going to have explosive offenses. It'll be exciting to watch. He'll help us sell tickets. But I mean, we're just hiring UCF's coach. And then he won. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, okay, all right, now we got to respect Josh Heupel. So if he was to have 2 down years, I would think that there might be some second guessing.
What are down years though?
Like down years are playing in a bowl game before Christmas, or like, not being top 5 SEC team, somewhere along those lines.
He's had 2 top 10 finishes in both the playoff and the AP polls in the last 3 years. I feel like that's bought him some time.
For sure.
Because if you look at Tennessee, when was the last time they'd finished in the top 10 in any poll? I know the answer, but do you guys know?
What?
2001. So he's done it twice in 3 years. He's been there 4, but twice in the last 3. I think he's got time.
So, would you put him on the untouchable status? I was
next year for sure.
He's like 2. I think he's 2 bad years.
Yeah, 2 bad years.
2 bad years away from hot seat discussion.
I think 7-5, 8-4 aren't bad years. I think if he misses a bowl game, then we could start talking.
What about Shane Beamer? If Shane Beamer misses a bowl game, win total's at 7.5, heavily juiced to the over. The expectation is the Gamecocks are an 8-4 type team. I think as long as they're a bowl team, no one's touching Shane Beamer. They had a great season this past year.
I do wonder though, like the 9-win aspect and them being in like the playoff hunt. I do wonder if that skews reality a little of where that program should end up being most of the time. Because I do think they overperformed a little bit last year.
For sure.
And as great as Lenore Sellers was and could be this year, they're losing a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked about that. Double-digit players invited to the combine. It's going to be tough to be able to go back and replace some of that talent moving forward. All right. We will be back here on Wednesday, where we'll turn our attention to the Big Ten, including Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans. Their win total is at 7.5. Over -118, under -104. What would that mean for Lincoln Riley, the Trojans, and so much more? That'll get us started as we continue to look through college football and ask if Vegas is right. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Stay hot, Big Cat.